We wish to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations as the traditional owners of the land on which our home stands. We respectfully acknowledge elders both past and present. Welcome to Season 9 of The Leak.
On this week's episode of The Leak,
we mourn the continuing relevance of 41-year-old film 9 to 5.
Meaning we explore the still prevalent gender pay gap in workplaces.
We validate our crappy hot takes by having a higher power endorse them.
Our neighbour Chelsea Ryan is dropping by to chat about sport, and Dr Leonora Risse, gender policy influencer and lecturer in economics at RMIT.
A sit down for a sincere and open dialogue about consent education with understanding, with the intention of encouraging a healthy development so women, men and children alike are protected from future sexual assault and harassment.
What kind of joke was that?
It's not a joke, we're going to do it.
Oh, I thought you had this bit where you just talk about gender inequality and then never go into it.
Nope. This is a serious issue. Humour can be helpful, but it can't replace healing, and that's what discussion is for.
That was a very smooth tonal shift. Welcome to The Leak. We're all doomed, aren't we?
Have this.
Wine isn't going to fix anything. Not after what I've seen.
What, the Titanic?
No, the news.
Oh.
Gender inequality just keeps coming at us again and again and again and again and again and again.
Okay. I get it. Look, we still have a long way to go when it comes to consent, for instance. But we are on the right road. Parents are pushing for their kids to be educated on consent at school. Parents protecting their kid. It's wild, right? I mean, sure, it's not always communicated in the most effective or clear way.
Milkshakes.
It is so incredibly disappointing hearing of countless male politicians and lawmakers and legal professionals getting caught up in sex scandals. There have been multiple just this year alone. And yet somehow we're the crazy ones for wanting respect and equal paycheck. And yes, I know not all men are bad sex-crazed maniacs. There are good ones fighting for the cause as well.
I mean, is it really too much to ask for a world where people know how to ask for things before they do it? I mean, not even websites know how to ask you for cookies, let alone people asking about sex.
Maybe we should put the wine...
Oh, you want to buy a Thermomix, do you? Oh, well, just click accept on this cookie, and then this cookie, and then this cookie, and oops, your session's timed out, but that's okay. We saved your password. And hey, why don't we harangue you with emails and advertise Thermomixes everywhere you go?
And I'm just going to take this. Yeah.
What about this? We all walk around with signs that say a big no. Go with me here.
Okay.
Imagine that guy at work who won't stop making shit racist or sexist jokes. No. Stop them in their tracks. Eventually you could just train that out of them, couldn't you? Well, I guess it's not that easy. Nothing worth having comes easy, hey?
That's why we need to remember why we're having this conversation, why we're talking, why we're doing what we're doing, why we're pushing. Sometimes in order to keep going, we have to celebrate what we have achieved. We need to celebrate the generation that is rising up and saying enough is enough. Right, Judy?
I feel like Judy's ignoring us.
She's so pretty, though.
I'm so proud of her.
We've been dealing with a flickering light in our upstairs bathroom, so for our Channel 31 viewers, it's time for an ad break. We'll be back with our friend Chelsea. It's sport time, and thank Oprah, that line no longer means we have to do the beat test.
Wait, what? We don't have to play sport, do we?
No. Oprah, no. Running for the tram is as close to sport as I'm comfortable with, but I am a big sports fan, and our sports host, Chelsea Ryan, is coming round to talk sports.
I love Chelsea. Let's table this discussion.
Yes.
Hello.
Thank you for coming over, and welcome to the leak, Chelsea.
Yeah.
Hi, so good to be here. I love what you've done with the place.
Now, you are a proper sports nerd, right? Like you play netball, you specialise in sports management, you've worked with swimming, Tennis Australia, Netball Australia, the list goes on. Plus done a bit of presenting and commentating at AFLW games and swimming championships.
I feel I can visualise your bedroom as a kid. So what sports superstars did you have on your bedroom walls?
I had so many posters up on my wall and then so many like backgrounds on my phone now of just sports women I admire. Yeah, but I love championing women's sports and talking about issues that are relevant to women, especially the stories that we need to get out there and have everyone hear. And so that's what I would love to talk about today, about the lack of representation of women in sports media. And so if you think about it, let's all take a moment. The coverage of recent times, what Australian athletes, coaches, commentators can you think of that you've recently seen?
Ash Party?
Taylor Harris.
Yeah. That's probably about it.
Yeah.
It really does tell you a lot about the state of sports, doesn't it?
I know, right? It can be really hard to come to some of these examples just because they're not there. It's because men's coverage dominates all the types of channels and women's gets left behind. And that is something that is central to gender equality that's in sport. What you can't see, you can't be. Let's look at some stats. We know that more than half of women and 37% of men are not satisfied with the current level of coverage of women's sport. The public genuinely want more than what they're getting.
Well, I want more.
Yeah. Well, the argument I hear a lot on trains and buses when I overhear some blokes is that women's sport just doesn't draw as much attention, so why bother?
No, I reckon that's definitely not the case. And it is shown from a study from the UK, which would be very relevant to Australia as well, that in the UK, per year, women's sport earns £350 million. And that's awesome. But wait, it gets even better, that by 2030, that number is almost going to triple and get to £1 billion.
Oh, cha-ching, 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 cha-ching.
Yes.
Exactly. We need to promote women in positions of power and where they can make decisions. So that's putting women in heads of sport for channels for TV or commentary or coaching or presenting and changing that culture and broadening the field.
And is there any other sports and content we can consume?
Yeah, absolutely. There's heaps. There's a ton of podcasts. But if you're on social media, what I'd recommend is consciously curating what you see. So I'd say for you guys, everyone at home, take 5 minutes, go search up some really amazing female athletes and teams, learn their names, give them a follow. And if you're going to be an active sports fan, supporting women, go get a membership to your favourite women's team. Or, you know what? Even go and join a local team yourself.
Sounds like something I'm going to have to do during the week. Will you join me then?
Absolutely, yeah. Give me a call.
Thanks so much for coming by, Chelsea. We love having you here. We'll see you soon.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. For so long, the conversation around consent has been touted as an uncomfortable one where we'd rather change the subject or leave the room. And when we do talk, we've been relying on soft visuals and censored vocabulary to break down some of our heaviest issues.
Yes, and maybe we're always reaching for food and drink metaphors is because they're easier on the palate.
Good one. Currently, the conversation around consent isn't even close to where it needs to be. So sure, that stuff goes down more easily, but anything's delicious on an empty stomach. Australians are long overdue for meatier messaging.
Ew.
Sorry. But at this point, it doesn't even feel like a conversation about consent.
It feels like a conversation about having a conversation.
If we're going to decide on what consent looks like, we need to be able to have conversations that make us feel uncomfortable. That's why Marie will be going live on Facebook. And this way we can all ask questions and learn together. Marie, do we have any viewers or questions?
Yep, we're now live and we're getting some first questions from John6969. Oh wait, that's weird. No, I'm blocking him. Moving on. But there are a lot of people saying that consent should be taught in kindergarten, and Amy supports it being taught in schools.
But because it's up to the states to implement national curriculum, sex ed differs between schools and even teachers. This means so many schools can get away with just doing the bare minimum. Sometimes not even touching, pun unintended, on consent. There's more standardisation about how much maths to teach children than there is on consent. But which of these things have you used more in your adult life?
Tim Fishboy2 has said something. He says, but surely people know when they're being violated, right? Like, isn't that something you can tell instinctively?
Not necessarily. Tim Fishboy2. Wait, the name Tim Fishboy was taken? Anyway, as a collective, we're not the best listeners. Like, if we're on the receiving end of a no, we often get defensive and make the conversation all about us.
That's all fair, but what is actually the sexiest way to do it?
Wait, what? Is that John again?
Oh, oops. Sorry.
Okay, but apparently confirming consent in an intimate setting can kill the moment. I mean, that's what I've been led to believe by a bunch of dudes on Reddit.
Well, you know what they say. One person's turn off is another person's chance at not getting traumatized. Awkward for a second, but better than assault.
And besides, what can seem like unnatural and awkward interruptions can become normal over time. Decades ago, the same case used to be made against using protection. Is it sexy to rip open a condom wrapper in the heat of the moment?
Not the way I do it.
Today, condom ads in the Super Bowl have become a competitive sport of their own.
And that comes to today's sponsor.
She's kidding. But, use protection?
Yep, protection, good.
You know what they say, no glove, no love.
And you don't know what they meant, then you don't have consent.
Discourse before intercourse.
Cautious before coitus.
Interview before you do the do.
If there's signs you can't read, don't do the deed.
No guesstimation before fornication.
Confirm before you squirm.
Check their mind before you grind.
Ask permission before you missionary.
Don't be a schmuck, ask before you Gender inequality, it's all around us. From glass ceilings to giant statues of men, male power fantasies are everywhere. Tonight we're joined by Dr Leonora Risse, gender policy advisor and a lecturer in economics at RMIT. Welcome, Doctor.
Hi, thanks for having me.
We're both very badly afflicted with a case of the gender gap. What exactly is gender inequality?
Well, some might say the gender gap is a chronic disease. So gender inequality, we're basically talking about gender gaps, gender differences in outcomes in the workforce, in wider society. When we trace it back, we can see that those gender gaps in outcomes often stem from gender gaps in opportunity and differences in the way that women are treated compared to men.
And recently the World Economic Forum ranked New Zealand as the 4th most gender equal country in the world, whereas Australia was almost 50th in the ranking. What the bloody hell are we doing wrong?
That's a good question. We should probably be asking our Prime Minister. So New Zealand does rate highly in those rankings, as do several of the Scandinavian countries like Finland and Iceland and some African countries like Rwanda. So why is Australia so far behind? We've probably become a bit complacent. We assume we have gender equality, we assume we have equal opportunity, and we're not tuned into the way that we have these unconscious biases that get in the way of opportunities, not just for women, but also for men potentially as well. for instance, men being able to be carers in their family. So why is Australia so far behind in these rankings? One of the areas in particular is our underrepresentation of women in politics.
You know, women only hold 23% of ministerial positions and 26% of parliamentary seats worldwide. So why aren't more women entering politics, do you think?
It's a really stark statistic, isn't it? So 50% of the population, but only a quarter of these positions of leadership and influence. So we have made progress, but what we're encumbered by are these traditional norms. We're not used to seeing women in positions of leadership and power. Even though they are increasing in representation, there's still a cultural norm that gets in the way. It's one thing to have women in power, it's another for them to be respected, it's another for them to have a voice and to be heard once they're in power. So we really have to break down all those implicit barriers to make sure we keep making progress in that way.
And speaking of those barriers, what kind of things can we be doing to achieve gender balance in politics?
So what we observe is that some parties that do have a proportionally higher representation of women have put in deliberate internal quotas and strategies, especially when it comes to shortlisting those females for their candidacy. And so it means that they've recognised there are these barriers. We really do need to approach women, to visualise women in this role and to tell them, yes, we want you in these roles, we're going to support you to be nominated, to be voted. There is something called Emily's List that the ALP has initiated. There are programs like Pathways to Politics, which is there to really bring women into that political space and to help them realise you can be a politician, you can be a leader, you have capability. I don't think that hesitancy comes from self-doubt or lack of confidence. What it comes from is being apprehensive about the way society and the environment that you're in is going to potentially treat you. So we also need to work on breaking down those discriminatory barriers.
And speaking of gender parity, just across the board as well, the World Economic Forum also reported that the pandemic delayed achieving gender parity by an entire generation. So it went from 99.5 years to 135.6 years, which is startling. Just quickly, what is gender parity?
Yeah, so parity is basically another word for being treated the same and experiencing the same outcome. So akin to the notion of equality and having those equality of opportunities. Those forecasts about, are we on track to achieve gender parity? They're really dismal. And the statistics you just read out point to the fact that the pandemic did have on average, a harder impact on women's jobs, on their economic participation, compared to male-dominated industries and sectors. And so the fact that it's widened the gap is really worrying and concerning, because it means you need to have policies in place that will make up ground.
Leonora Risse, thank you so much for coming and chatting with us. You're welcome anytime. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me here. Great.
So Chief, as the CEO of Man Industries, what were your thoughts on the pay gap conversation?
Yeah, the women in our organisation were up and about early. We knew they'd come out hard, especially after the gender pay gap studies in 2018, but full credit to the Boys Club for sticking to our brand of archaic structures.
Matzo, what are your thoughts on
Coffee. I'd love a coffee, thanks, love.
Matzo, can you talk us through what you did after that 15-minute onslaught?
Yeah, we were a bit shaky to withstand their demands in the first period. Ugh. All these facts, best practices, it really had us on the back foot. We threw everything at them. We told them that pay gaps didn't exist and that they were crazy and that they should just work harder to get the same pay. But it only made them seem to fire up more, not sure why. Next question.
Matzo? Just wanted to know, did you ask me for a coffee before?
Gosh, I forgot to mention the newspaper too. Thanks, love.
So Matzo, what changes did you make in the second half?
So we made a couple of moves that I think helped change the tide. We were able to let women go when we realised she was 6 weeks pregnant. We demoted an employee with 15 years experience to a casual contract, and we put numbers around the women to discriminate them. Rumours, taunts, basics.
What do you think was the difference between the two in the end?
Well, pay, obviously, and status and value. In the end, we were able to overwhelm their facts with our confidence. I think the stats show on average women spend 64% of their working week performing unpaid care work. So they spend almost twice as many hours performing their work each week compared to men. And I think having less run in their legs helped us get over the line.
Matzo, just wanted to clarify your comments, Matzo.
Any injuries to the guys, Matzo?
Yeah, several of our guys are frazzled. I've taken a massive hit to my ego, but men have been training the house down in gender inequality for generations. So it's ingrained in our culture. We'll bounce back and trust our systems to oppress other groups well into the future. Who's next?
Matzo, just seeking clarity on those comments there, Matzo.
Just lastly,
Oh, seriously?
when do you expect to see the sexual harassment re-enter the organisation?
Yeah, us men, I know, it's cliche, but we're taking it 1 week at a time. You know, spinning every allegation that comes and scrambling our way to cover it up.
So?
Oh, next week probably.
Yeah, great, mate.
All right, folks, just one more question. Is that lovely coffee ready, sweetheart?
Mr. Matzo, or whatever the hell your name is, no, your coffee is not ready, you sexist Neanderthal. This whole press conference is a joke. People like you are why gender inequality exists in the first place. Firing a woman because she's pregnant? Or keeping talented female employees in low-paying jobs for no reason, or bullying them so they leave, does not make you a leader. Your mother would be appalled. I wonder what she'd say if she knew you were treating women like this.
Well, please don't tell my mother.
Well, you know what to do then.